Good evening, everybody. Happy Christmas Eve. Eve. I know we're getting started, both a little bit late and a little bit early. Originally, I'd scheduled it for 9:45. I was like, "Hey, everybody's in bed. I can take a shower, and we'll get started at 9:35." And then the hot shower felt really good, so I just sort of stood in it for a while. But good evening, everybody. Glad you're here. And whether if you're new to the channel, I'm glad you've joined us. If you're a regular, if you're an old timer, welcome back. Glad everybody's here. And if you haven't already, head over to the merch store and check out the merch store. You got some be kind to someone, and got a cup of tea tonight to wind down. So head on over. I don't know that you'll get it in time for Christmas, but if you've got like a late Christmas or a dirty Santa or white elephant or Yankee swap, whatever you call it in your neck of the woods, and looking here at Laurie Sue Cragen, clamped 4411. It's been forever. Hope you and yours are doing well. We are. Everybody's happy and healthy. Thank you so much, and to you as well. Merry Christmas, Penny Ritchie 8307. Good evening. Welcome back, Stephen Adams. Thanks for hanging out with us again tonight. He says, I'm looking forward to the stream. I'm looking forward to the stream too. Don't know necessarily which direction it's going to go. I've got a bit of an outline, but we'll see how the night plays out. Just super glad everybody's here. If you guys have questions, throw them up in the comments. I'll be reading the chat as we go. And I did verify. Let me double check on my monitor here. I did verify that memberships are active. Okay, so my memberships are active. I'm not sure how you see those on your end, but the memberships, for those who were asking last week, or a couple of days ago, I guess, the memberships are live at the moment. Poodaloo 391. Poodaloo, haven't seen that name in a long time. So glad you're with us, and Merry Christmas to you and yours as well. Cajun Rage V3K. Hey, how's it going? Doing very well, Cajun Rage. You say you have a question. I'll do my best. Fire away. Stephen Adams says, what's the theme for the night? Or is it just random? I don't know that it's random. Most of the time, unless I have a very specific issue or item that I want to cover with you guys. I tend to let you guys set the pace. Don't know if I'm going to have any mods here tonight or not. But Electric Boogaloo, welcome back. He says he or she says hiya. Well, hello to you as well. Glad everybody's here. If you're new to the channel, I'm glad you've decided to hang out with us. If you are a longtime follower or subscriber, I'm so glad, at least, that you're back. If you haven't been there recently, go check out the merch store. We've still got the Be Kind to Someone logo. We also get it on a coffee cup here. So got a cup of tea. Not a big tea guy, but I'm learning to do it. I tend to just drink black coffee and water, but learning to look at it. All right, we're gonna go ahead and solid there. All right. Does it matter to you, not to me? 46. Long name there. Welcome back. I hope you and your family are doing well. Everyone is happy and healthy. We do have a moderator with us tonight. Good evening, Laura. For my moderators, I've got to do some research and find out what you all can and can't see on your end as far as misbehaving clients on the vertical stream. That tends to be where the issues are. Dr. Turk in Texas, welcome back. Welcome back. Merry Christmas. Second to you, Dr. Turk in Texas. Glad you're here. Raging Cajun asks if I can listen to a specific song after the stream. Johnny can you play Johnny can? I'll listen to it on my own time. Yeah, I'll spot you that. Laura, Art and Courts is with us as well. Good evening, Art and Courts. And Laura says, "Here for duty, sir. I'm much too young for you to be calling me sir." Although, as I say that, I came back from the gym today, and I don't bounce back from workouts like I did 10 years ago. I'm having to learn that I can't push myself in my mid to late 30s like I could in my mid to late 20s. Stephen Adams, 4466. I've been a long time subscriber. You have. I've seen you around a long time. For those who don't know, he used to be Oakland baseball. I'd still get excited for every new stream. Hey, I get excited every time I get to come hang out with you guys too. So, Poodaloo, new member. Thank you very much, Poodaloo. I do appreciate that. For those who don't know, my memberships are live. Art and Courts is sitting in vertical now. Okay, gotcha. Let's see. I am referred to as Rib Guy from Doesn't Matter to You, Not to Me 46. So it sounds like Laura knows Rib Guy. I don't know you yet, Rib Guy, or maybe you've changed your name, but in any event, I'm glad you're here. Welcome, everybody. If you haven't already, go check out the merch store. I need to update that a little bit, get some more stuff on it, but go check out the merch store. Go as you're able. And the let's see, CK Altenbach 60. Hello. For my Supreme Court nerds out there, you'll know that the U.S. Supreme Court shadow docket has been quite active, almost in a different way than it normally has. Electric Boogaloo says hot here in Sydney, Australia, Christmas Eve, 35 degrees C, like 90-ish, I think. Yeah, close. 42 C is 100 Fahrenheit. So yeah, you're in the ballpark there. It's certainly hot. Where I am in the southern part of the center strip of the United States. So Texas, I'm in Oklahoma. So if you start like in the dead center of the country, on the Mexican border, you have Texas, and then you have Oklahoma, I think Kansas, Nebraska, so on and so forth. And so I'm in Oklahoma, and I'm southern Oklahoma specifically. I'm about equidistant between Dallas and Oklahoma City. I'm just about 3 hours, 2 hours and 40 minutes, depending on what part of the city you're going to. So it's been in the 70s here. So what is that, about 23 C, 22 C, 23 C, somewhere around in there, something like that. Let's see. Murder 911. Glad you're back. So glad you're back. Well, glad to be back. Oh, CK Ultimate. You know me as Say What? I do know you as Say What. I'm glad you're here. Welcome back, friend. Art and Courts, who don't know, just finished their PhD, now teaching at the collegiate level, but also their political science, and their research was in federal courts and specifically some Supreme Court stuff. So yeah, Shadow Docket's been super duper active this year. Laura Waldy says that's warm. That is warm in Oz. It's true. I'm at 2C right now in Southwest Ontario. I feel like that's a little bit warm for you guys. Maybe not. I mean, I don't have a ton of experience with my friendly neighbors to the Great White North, but now I have a cousin whose dad is my uncle, who's retired career Navy, lived all over the world, lived in Guam, lived in Japan, lived in Hawaii. Sorry, lived in Guam, went to Japan, lived in Hawaii, lived in Orlando, Florida for a while when she was younger. She ended up marrying a Canadian, I believe, has moved to the Great White North. My uncle, her dad, has retired to the Houston area. So having spent now she did spend some time in upstate New York in Ballston Spa and some time up in the Seattle area at a submarine facility up there. Maybe Kitsap, somewhere around in there. Anyway, so she's got a little bit of time in the cold weather, but certainly nothing like she's getting. This is, I think, her second Canadian winter. So let's see. Hot dogs or brats? Probably hot dogs. I don't love the intestinal cover they put around brats. It's super stringy. Like I can get to the meat inside, but the brat tears. It doesn't tear clean. So yeah, probably hot dogs. Does eating a half a pound of bacon every day for 32 weeks give you I don't know. Didn't go to medical school. Couldn't tell you. I can't imagine that that's great health advice, but there's smarter people than me would be who you'd have to turn to for that. Sorry. Well, it says it is seasonal for this time of year. We had some Arctic weather earlier. We had a brief Arctic plunge. We got down into so I guess it'd be single digits in the low or the high negatives. So -1, -2 C, which would be minus. It'd be like 28 to 30 Fahrenheit here for about a week or so. AI and the law. Where are we with that? What a great question. I'm going to say this wrong, probably Kose, Kossae. AI and the law. Where are we with that? Well, that's a great question. I think it does a couple of things. I think it has the potential to make legal research easier. And from a functional standpoint, there's always for at least the last 20 years, since the advent of these large legal databases, whether it's Westlaw or LexisNexis or Bloomberg, they have for a long time had some AI behind it, because you could type in, what are the elements of civil conspiracy? What are the elements of fraud in the inducement? Like you could query it like Google, like just like you could put in an instruction into ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot or something, and it would generate results. Of course, you could also do Boolean. So for example, I want, insurance or cases involving the Hartford Insurance Group, but do not involve Woodman of the World. And it has to be an opinion authored by, like, you can set these various criteria to narrow the search down. So we've always had that. I say always. We've had that for 20 years or whatever. But the AI, as far as drafting pleadings, here's the thing: AI is wrong. I mean, it can write. If you're not a great writer, I think it's a great tool that you could drop a pleading in and say, can I make my argument better? Can I make my argument stronger? What are things I need to do to be more persuasive in what it is that I'm trying to accomplish with this pleading? But if you just say, write me a motion for summary judgment and give them 2 pages of the facts of the case, and give me relevant citations, it's it's wrong. And lawyers are regularly, fortunately they're getting punished, but unfortunately they're still continuing to try and do it. Lawyers are getting punished, and they're getting ethics violations as a result of their use and submitting briefs with citations that are just made up. Because like if I cite a case or I cite a statute or something in my brief, not only should the judge, but the judge not only does the judge, but the judge should be reading all of that, because that's the crux of my argument. That's my research. So, we have a long way to go. It's off to a solid start, but we have a long way to go. With AI, and ultimately it's the responsibility is on the end user to make sure that they're using it in an ethical way. Lawyers that are just dropping these things in, they're getting sanctions against them. They're getting hit with fines and fees and all kinds of stuff. So, and they should. So So it has a great opportunity. There's a great opportunity to use it. We just have to be mindful and ethical in the use of it. Is it illegal to, this is from Critical Rick, is it illegal to smoke in the car with kids if your window is down? I don't know. I can only tell you as to the jurisdictions where I live and where I practice. Um, as of the current time, it is not directly, there is no statute that says thou shalt not do that. However, in a reasonable interpretation of the statute, um, it would certainly give leverage or leeway at least to the idea of like child endangerment, reckless endangerment, and reckless disregard for the health and safety of minors. So certainly a variety of potential causes, but it's not at least in the jurisdictions in which I practice is not expressly illegal. But I would refer you to a licensed attorney in your jurisdiction for more information. Arton Courts, who's battling this in real time at the collegiate level, says the real challenge is convincing new students that they need to understand how to conduct legal research before adding in AI. It's a constant struggle. Yeah. So they still need to know, like when I was in law school, my legal research and writing professor, we of course learned how to use the databases, but we still learned how to do paper research. Like you would start with a legal thesaurus, or you would start with the legal encyclopedia, and you would look up the issue you were trying to research, and it would list a site of a long list of major important decisions. Then you would start sorting through those by jurisdiction and by issue, and just continue to narrow it down and narrow it down and narrow it down. So we'll see. Yeah. So, the importance of doing legal research longhand is super, super important. And then you can do all the research you want to, but at the end of the day, you still have to write your own brief. Now, that's why I say if you write the brief, if you write the motion for summary judgment or the response to a motion for summary judgment or a reply in support or something, if you're doing the actual pleading, writing, and briefing, if you write a rough draft, that AI can be a really good tool. Hey, review this and give me ideas on what I can do better. Right. Especially if you could create a rubric and, okay, here's the rubric I want to use. I want you to use. Here's the writing I've done. I want you to give me advice on how I can make this argument cleaner. So it has some really important applications. We just have to make sure we do it right. Laura Wally says, what a great question. I wonder what AI is going to be like in 10 years. Yeah, really interesting question there by Laura. I'm trying to keep up with the chat. You guys are flying in with your comments, which is good. I'm trying to keep up. Will it eliminate jobs? I think it'll eliminate some. It'll certainly eliminate some entry level and administrative support type jobs. So think like secretary or something like that, where you would, take messages or, jot down notes at a meeting or something like that. AI can certainly be helpful for that. Doing a deposition summaries, instead of having to pour through it for hours, you can drop a depo transcript in and say, okay, summarize this. And in theory, AI could do it. But remember, so just because it may cost a job at the administrative level, it's going to create additional jobs, right? I mean, we have to build the infrastructure to support the computers that are running AI. We have to supply electricity. We have to supply water. We have to supply utilities. We have to maintain those facilities. And so I think that although it may eliminate jobs in one category, it will certainly create and support jobs in a different category. So I don't know if it's going to be a net loss, a net gain, or if it's all going to come out in the wash. So I think there will be a change in jobs, but I don't know that there'll be a loss. But it's a fair question. Only time will tell. Good question. Can't think of a better name. I haven't been here in a while. Do you still have the foster kids? Not the two we had before. They have. We had them for a year, so they were able to finish their school year in the district in which they started, and then over the summer they moved on to bluer skies and greener pastures. An opportunity for them to grow and mature and start to develop some independent self-identity. So it's good for them, and for the most part, they, at least last we've heard, they're doing well at their new placement. So we wish them all the best. I have to skip that one. I have no idea what any of that information is. COSA or COSE. This person who asked the original AI question sounds like the same as in my field. AI is useful, but humans always have to be in the loop. It's true. Noise like 1, 2, 3. What type of lawyer are you? Well, I'm not. So it's a fair question, and not being critical. I'm not really sure I understand the question. However, the question is simply because, at least in the jurisdiction which I practice, there are some states who have legal specialty boards, but the jurisdictions which I practice do not have legal specialization boards. So I'm licensed to practice every type of law that there is in the jurisdictions in which I practice. Now, as a practical matter, I think I've done one criminal case. It was a misdemeanor plead out. It took me, I don't know, like 10 minutes. When I was doing a lot of trial work, it was all civil trial work, mainly insurance-based litigation. So first I was representing people who had been injured as a result of other people's negligence or misbehavior. And then it became what we refer to as first-party bad faith, where your house would get hailed on and you would file a claim and they would not replace your roof or fix the damage to your house or something. So, and then right now, most of my practice is, one, it's not full time, but the little bit of law that I do practice is primarily transactional. So, wills, trusts, estates, end of life plans, contracts, things like that. That's what I do. That's most of what I do currently. Stay Clever as favorite Bible verse. Well, kind of in interest of, first off, I think it's a fair question. But I don't have one particular favorite Bible verse. There are a variety of places that I turn to when I need guidance, when I'm working through an issue and I need guidance, whether maybe I'm grieving or we're celebrating or I'm looking for guidance on what decision to make. In the part of my life that that the Bible governs, then I will certainly turn to those passages. I don't have any one particular favorite verse per se, but there are many that I rely on, depending on what issues I'm trying to navigate in my life. Legal research and writing course sounds cool. I took it just out of interest. Yeah, it was a cool course. I think every first year law student takes it, and it's twofold. First, you learn how to do legal research, and you start learning how to write in a legal way. It's an acquired skill. You get better the more you do it. And then the other thing it teaches you is you also learn how to work on your oral advocacy, what we call oral argument. So arguing a case to the judge, arguing a motion for summary judgment, a little bit of trial work, not a lot of examination, direct and cross-examination of witnesses, but certainly how to give an opening statement or a closing argument. In some jurisdictions, they call it a summation. How to argue a dispositive motion, things like that. And so you get in front of faculty and upper division students and learn and practice those skills with those folks. Elephant is back. Welcome. Good evening. For those who may have come in after I made the announcement, the memberships are live on the channel. I did verify that prior to going live tonight. So let's see. We use AI to transcript our meetings presently, says Laurie, and that's fair. I don't know that AI will ever be, I don't know that the courts, at least in the federal level and probably even at the criminal level, because the stakes are just so darn high, would ever allow, at least in the foreseeable use of AI, the actual court reporter to ultimately be replaced. AI can certainly help, but I think there's still going to be a human shorthand reporter writing it down on the steno machine. If you guys haven't seen the steno machines, they're so cool. They don't work like a computer. One hand is consonants, one hand is vowels. Everything is spelled phonetically, and then they then take basically that shorthand and then they type it out longhand. Now the new computer software does a lot of that for them, but it used to be the ticker tape would come out the back and they'd have to transcribe all that. But if you haven't ever seen a steno machine, stenography machine, go check one out. It's really, really cool. Let's see. Art courses. I'm worried about the devaluation of higher education due to AI. Many instructors avoid writing assignments altogether. Students just yay for writing and thinking employers might be pleased. That's true. That's true. Laurie Sue Cragen says, I am a CASA. That's a court-appointed special advocate. So for those who don't know, when there's cases involving minor children, CASA is a program where generally non-lawyers, I don't think you can be a lawyer to do this, but generally non-lawyers get appointed by the court, by the judge, to serve as an emotional support person for the children. They don't advocate for the children. They don't argue or advocate in the legal sense. They don't stand up and make arguments for the children. But the judge will ask, will ask questions of the CASA, and the CASA's duty is it's not to the court, it's to the child, and to be there to help support the child. So, if you have a heart for that, go check out CASA in your local jurisdiction. It's a nationwide program, so go check out CASA, Court-Appointed Special Advocates. So she says, I'm a CASA, truly appreciate what you're doing for my, well, thank you very much. I have an open guardianship case, not involving my fosters, in which a friend of mine, he and his wife are the guardian over their grandchild. And so I've seen this, and I've also represented, I represented a mom who had her daughter taken away because she was suffering from mental health and substance abuse issues. Certainly was not in the right state of mind to raise her child. Got to rehab, got mental health treatment, got rehab, got cleaned out or got dried out and sober, and worked a reunification plan. And it took just about a year, which is about how long it takes if everybody's working really hard to fix it, including the parents. She was able to get her daughter back within the year, and has been very successful since. Ever since she got dry, got sober, she's been very successful ever since. She's become very successful in the real estate business, and is really a fantastic mom to her child. So. It was very kind of you and Megan to take those kids, and thank you. Well, thank you, Laura. Let's see. Yeah. Say what says you should say, what kind of lawyer am I? A good lawyer. That's funny. That's funny. I like that. Let's see. The problem is sour diesel. I didn't go to Fallujah. But the good news is I have a button that fixes all that. Replace the jury with AI. No, because AI doesn't use logic in the traditional sense. It uses logic in the software sense. It doesn't possess the ability to generate its own logic. So. But you 6 Leroux, who says replace the jury with AI. It's an interesting position. Like, it's an interesting question though. What would the effect of an AI jury be? Yeah. I'm not a big Star Trek guy, but I know just enough about it to know that, like, I think is it Data, the character Data it's a droid or some sort of humanoid looking robot thing, I guess, is the idea. And it doesn't use emotion. It's strictly logic. And technically they're just supposed to use logic to apply the facts. But as a lawyer, our job is to get these people, to get these jurors on a jury emotionally invested in the outcome of this case. That's not the way it's supposed to work, but that's our job. That's what we're called to do. That's in order to zealously advocate the position of our client. That's what we need. Are you planning on doing a Patreon for members? The Patreon is still live, actually. I never took the buy me a coffee down. I never took the Patreon down. So those are still out there. In court, I always see someone with their mouth up to something. I assume recording right into it. What is it? Maybe. It's an older school way of doing it, but that's what they're doing, is they're basically just repeating question answer into an audio recording device that they will then come back later, listen to, and transcribe what they hear. And it's sort of covers their face like this, and so they probably are not talking the whole time. They may be filling in words like witness shakes head up and down, witness shakes head side to side, for example, or they may say witness points to screen. Like, they may be adding descriptors that just simply writing down the words doesn't get. So, for example, one of the things that, like, when I give instructions before I depose a witness, I'll say things like, hey, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions today. Some of them you're probably going to think aren't my business, and well, you're probably right, but I'm going to ask them anyway. If I ask you a yes or no question, I'd like you to limit your question to a yes or no answer. And then I'll say, because this fine lady or this fine gentleman sitting next to you is the court reporter, his or her job is to write down everything that I ask and everything that you respond. So in order to do that, I'm going to do my very best not to talk over you, and I'd ask you not to talk over me. I'm going to do my very best to let you finish your answer before I start the next question, and I'd ask that you let me finish my question before you start your answer. Okay? If you need me to repeat the question, if you don't understand the question, simply ask me to repeat it. I will do my very best. If you need to take a break at any point, use the bathroom, get a cup of coffee, stretch your legs, clear your head, you're welcome to do so. Just let me know. And if I have a question on the table, meaning I've asked a question that you have not yet provided an answer to, I simply ask that you answer that question, and then we can take as many breaks as often as you would like until we conclude this deposition. And then finally, anytime you answer in the affirmative, I need you to say yes. And if you answer in the negative, say no. Saying things like uh-huh and huh, or nodding your head up and down or side to side. All the transcript says is witness nods head. And then mm-hmm and hmm look a whole lot alike when you're just typing H's and M's. And we don't want to put this fine lady or fine gentleman in the position of having to guess what your answer is. So if I ask you a question and you say mm-hmm, or you nod, I'm going to say, is that a yes? And I just need you to say, out loud, the answer is yes or the answer is no. And I'm not trying to be critical. That's the only way we can have a nice, clean record. So in 6 months or a year, when we go to trial on this and I go back to look at this, I can make heads or tails of your answers. Is that fair? That's the normal spiel that I give going into a deposition. So. Futurama has a robot judge. It doesn't end well for Fry. True. At Robert Jose 1 says, will AI replace lawyers with all the knowledge they have online? I don't think so. Lawyers have access to that same knowledge. But the difference is, this sort of goes back to the idea of logic and common sense. There's machine logic, machine learning versus like common sense. And so if I have 10 lawyers around a table and we're all given the same fact pattern and we're all given the same research, we're all going to write 10 different briefs and argue different points different ways. And AI can't do that. And so there are some lawyers that, like, I'm a good writer. I worked with some great writers. I'm a good writer. I'm not a great writer. I'm good, better than average, but I'm not great. One of the best writers that I ever worked with could not argue how to tie a tennis shoe. Just was not his strong point. He was an eloquent, beautiful writer, and his briefs were so interesting to read because of the flow and the logic and the argument and the way he would write it. But he just would panic. You put him in a courtroom in front of a judge, even if it's empty, just two lawyers and the judge and the court reporter, like, he'd just panic. That wasn't his thing. He was perfect. He used to say that his dream job would be to write motions for summary judgment in a windowless basement for the rest of his life, and he'd be happy. He just didn't like going to court, and that's okay. And so that part of it, I don't think AI is ever going to be able to do right. Stephen Adams asks, if someone is in prison serving a life sentence and then they pass away and then resurrect, is their life sentence over, or do they still have to serve their sentence? Oh, I see. So like if they were to say, for example, have a heart attack, go into cardiac arrest where they are technically medically dead, and then some, AED or something was used to revive this person. No, they would have to continue to serve their life sentence. The life sentence ends when life actually ends. Now, we're not talking about, dietic resurrections in this situation. While you didn't give me all that information, I'm interpreting it as they have a heart attack, a stroke, they go into cardiac arrest, their heart stops beating, whatever. Life-saving, advanced cardiac life support, and life-saving measures are employed rather. The person survives, then what? Yeah, they would still have to continue serving their time. That's what so Laura comments, she doesn't see a lot of the mask-like devices on televised cases. It's a dying art form because now, one, the court reporting technology is a lot better. Two, the court reporting certification standards are as rigorous now as they ever have been. And three, just about every courtroom in America, even just as a security camera, has a camera in it. And so if they need to go back and grab footage, in fact, that happened to a district judge that we talked about a while back on this channel. A district judge in Oklahoma, in Lincoln County, actually near where I grew up, ended up resigning from her position as a judge before she could, because the security camera footage was used to catch her in a series of lies I believe she's still in private practice, but is no longer a judge. Let's see. How does the deposition? Ooh, Happy Quails LC. Really interesting question here. How does the deposition reconcile itself against the right not to self-incriminate? Yeah. So here the question is, well, what about Fifth Amendment protection? It's a fair question. Depositions are a discovery tool only used in civil cases. I think there is a procedure to try and get a deposition in a criminal case. It basically doesn't happen. In a criminal case, you just have to write it. You just have to file a motion requesting discovery, and the government has to give you everything they have. It's something known as a Brady, the Brady law. And if they fail to disclose any exculpatory evidence that might prove the defendant didn't do it or that someone else did do it, if they don't turn that over to the defense, it's a Brady violation, and it's grounds for a mistrial and to open the prison doors. It's a big deal. So most governments just dump the files on the defense attorney's desk. In fact, they'll often give them a whole lot more than they need just to make the defense attorney work really hard. So in a civil case, and the difference is, in a criminal case, the maximum penalty would be incarceration. Right? You go to prison, possibly forever, and in states that still have the penalty where we get to commit homicide against another person, that could also, in theory, be a penalty. In civil cases, the worst you could get would be a money judgment. Maybe you lose your property, your house gets foreclosed, or whatever the situation may be. But the worst that could happen is a money judgment. You either lose property or you lose money. And so if you are seeking to protect your right against self-incrimination, you can assert the Fifth Amendment privilege in a deposition. You know, so it's asserted at trial. There are no limits as to when you can ask for it, when you can invoke it. However, once you invoke it, you're done. So if I ask you, like, if I think somebody's going to invoke the Fifth, I want to ask the questions first that I know that they can answer without invoking the Fifth, that are going to benefit my case. Then if there's stuff on the back end that maybe would make them look better or would be not as good for my client, I don't want to ask those. I want to save those until the very end, because what I want to do is I want to ask the questions that are going to be beneficial to me, the answers that I can use that support my position. Then I'm going to ask them the question that they then invoke the right of self-incrimination, or the right against self-incrimination. So they invoke the Fifth Amendment. At that point, the examination stops. I'm not allowed to ask them any more questions. If I ask them more questions, anything they tell me I can't use. Okay. And so what that means is I'll get the stuff I want, then I'll ask the question to force them to invoke their Fifth Amendment right, which shuts them up. I can't ask them questions, but neither can the other side. So that other information that they were going to try and get out to maybe harm my client or benefit the other side or something, I can shut that down. If you do it strategically, you can get out the stuff you need. Then you ask them the question or questions that cause them to invoke the Fifth Amendment protection, and then it shuts out the rest of the stuff that would otherwise, maybe be material in the case. That's the way the Fifth Amendment works. So the right exists. You can invoke it if you choose to. Now you have to have a reasonable basis to believe it. You can't just claim it because you don't want to answer questions in a deposition. That's not remotely how it works. And then finally, oftentimes lawsuits, anytime somebody violates a criminal statute, so think of the O.J. Simpson case, for example, right? Most reasonable people would say that O.J. did the bad thing. But a jury found him not guilty. Not guilty doesn't mean he didn't do it. It means the state of California failed to prove their case beyond the requirement of a reasonable doubt. Yes, they failed to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. Most reasonable people say, yeah, absolutely, O.J. did it. Yeah. So what happened was Ron Goldman's family waited until O.J. was found not guilty. Then they sued him. And after they sued him, they then take his deposition. He can no longer assert the Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination, because even if he stands up under oath with 50 cameras and God himself watching and says, you're darn right, I stabbed Nicole, you're darn right, I stabbed Ron, and I would do it again tomorrow, they still can't send him to prison. They still can't try him. They can't charge him. They can't try him. They can't convict him. Because that protection is the protection of double jeopardy. Okay. So in that case, they waited for the criminal trial to play out. Then they take the criminal trial. Then they sue him after the criminal trial. And now, because he was found not guilty, even if he's found guilty, it wouldn't matter either. But because he's been adjudicated, what we call adjudicated on the merits, his case has been decided, the criminal case has, he can no longer claim Fifth Amendment protection as it relates to what happened outside the condo in Brentwood. So good question. I get lots of compliments on my "Be Kind to Someone" shirt. That's good. That makes me happy. You know, sometimes if I'm feeling super ornery, my wife will say, "Hey, put your Be Kind shirt on," because I can't, on one hand, wear "Be Kind to Someone" and then act a fool like at the same time, right? So anytime I'm feeling a little bit froggy, she'll say, "Hey, put your shirt on and behave. We got to go out in public today." Can lawyers use rhetorical tricks to bait an adverse witness into being hostile so you can then ask them leading questions? Oh, sorry, I jumped. Or is that no? Absolutely. First off, I wouldn't bait them if they're an adverse witness. I can just say, "Judge, this is an adverse witness. I'd like to ask leading questions." So what I'd say is, "This is an adverse witness, Judge. I would like to treat them as a hostile witness." Now the judge may say, "Well, they're not acting hostile yet. Let them get hostile." Okay, cool. In that case, I'm going to ask the question, right? When did you stop, slapping your mama? Well, if you've never slapped your mama, how do you answer that question? If you say never, it means it implies you're actively slapping your mama. And if you say yesterday, it implies that you slapped your mother until yesterday, right? So you can ask the question, you can get him to act a fool. Okay, Judge, and now I'd like to treat him as a hostile witness. Cool. Now I can ask leading questions. But anytime I've got somebody on cross-examination, I can ask him leading questions anyway. Like the whole idea of cross-examination, direct examination is to let the witness testify. The cross-examination is the attorney's time to testify. So I can ask whatever question I want to. I can try and get whatever emotional reaction I want to. And if I'm good enough at my job, I'll get that reaction from that witness. So nope, nothing unethical about that. Well, Laura says, "I remember that case about the judge and her rude texting about the lawyers." Yeah. I wondered if her bar license would have been revoked, but I guess not. It's not. So weird thing. In that same county, a different judge, a special judge, a judge of what we call limited jurisdiction, the special judge in that county also acted a fool, and she now has a public reprimand on her record. There is a Supreme Court opinion about her. And to be frank, I didn't appear in front of her a lot, but the 2 or 3 times I was in front of her, she was grumpy. She was not a good judge to be in front of. Like, it didn't matter what side of the case you were on. She was just angry all the time. And then while she took ownership of some of it, she told the disciplinary tribunal, the Council of Judicial Complaints, that, "Well, I'm just not a morning person." Sorry, hon, it's 3:00 in the afternoon. The morning was like 6 hours ago. Laura Waldy said, "Would you consider teaching law students? I think you'd be good at it." Oh, maybe. I've been in higher ed and I enjoy higher ed, but legal education is a different animal. I don't want to write the law review articles. Law review articles are hard. Law review articles are dense. They're hard. There's this one that literally, one of the faculty members I was in law school wrote a law review called Pomo Babble, Postmodernism Babble. It was a critique of these baby lawyers, this new generation of lawyers who were trying to bury all their arguments in the footnotes because they run out of pages. And it was like 180 pages of just like nonsense and footnotes. In fact, I'm gonna see if I can pull it up real quick here. I wonder if I can find it. Yeah, here it is. Let's see if I can pull this up here. Yeah, it was Professor Dennis Arrow, Oklahoma City University School of Law. This is the Michigan Law Review from December of 1997. Listen to the page count here, guys. Page 461 to page 689. So 228 pages of this stuff. And it was called Pomo Babble, Postmodern newspeak and constitutional meaning for the uninitiated. And it starts with, at this moment, there exists not the smallest prospect that my manuscript will ever see the light, unless by some miracle it were to leave our beleaguered European fortress and bring to those without some breath of the secrets of our prison house. Only because I consider that future readers will wish to know who and what the author is, do I preface the disclosure with a few notes about myself. I am by nature wholly moderate, of a temper, I must say, both healthy and humane, addressed to reason and harmony, a scholar, not lacking all contact with the arts, but a son of the muses in the academic sense, by which preference regards itself as descended from the German humanists of the time of the poets. And so if it's 200 and some pages of this stuff, and it's just thousands of footnotes. I'm trying to, in fact, I want to see how many footnotes it goes to. There's the tab. Hang on, let me look at the bottom here. There are there's over 1,200 footnotes on this thing. And the footnotes will go for pages. Yeah. So like, it's a great satirical article, but that's an art and courts thing. But it's Professor Dennis W. Arrow, Oklahoma City University. It's called Pomo Babble, Postmodern Newspeak and Constitutional Meaning for the uninitiated. And I'll give you the site for that. Michigan Law Review, Ann Arbor, Volume 96, Issue 3, December 1997, pages 461 through 689. Yeah, there you go. Well, one doesn't commit tax fraud successfully. Epicros says, great answer. I feel like if I'd gotten better explanations like this in school, I would have found it easier to remember them. Well, I hate that you had a bad time with it, but hopefully you learned a little something here. Stuart Gorham argues, no, it also possibly means the jury was racially biased or star power biased, and that they would never have convicted him. The system is broken. So the first two statements I agree with. Maybe it was racially, but I mean, we do know that there were more blacks than whites on the jury. But by then, OJ had sort of associated himself with the white folks. I mean, a successful football player, TV star, commercials, a sportscaster, living in a very white neighborhood, playing golf at very white country clubs, hanging out with the Kardashians and hanging out with lots of famous. Anyway, so yeah, I agree. Could have been a racial issue. It could have been the star power issue. Certainly, he was a very likable guy. He was very well liked in society to that point. But to say the system is broken is, I disagree. I think our system works. There's no perfect system, but I will take our system over any of the other systems in the world. I will take ours every time. Elephant says, "What were you reading? What is it? What is it for? I didn't understand it." That's exactly the point. It was a satire. It was a satire argument. It literally is. If you Google it, OKCU law, Pomo Babble, and hit enter, you'll see a bunch of stuff pop up. One of the first things says the satirical law review article written by Dennis W. Arrow. It is satire. The Journey 2020. Hi, Zach. Hello. Nathan Hazelhurst, 484. People are broken. Again, kind of like I disagreed with your colleague above. I disagree that people are broken there. Now, don't get me wrong. There are bad people. And good people sometimes make bad choices. But I don't think that people are inherently broken. I mean, you posit that people are inherently broken. I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't believe that all people are broken. I don't think that everybody makes the right choices, and undoubtedly there are some bad people in this world. I'm certainly not downplaying that to be true. I disagree with the precept that all people are broken. We are fighting with each other while our rulers, not the right use of an apostrophe there, while our rulers do terrible things, not the right use of an apostrophe there either, behind closed doors. I'm not fighting with anyone. And the Oklahoma State Supreme Court just handed down a massive opinion regarding Open Records Acts and public and Freedom of Information requests. And so, at least in my little chunk of the world here, there's not a lot of closed door dealing. I'm sure there is somewhere around the world, but certainly not in my little piece of heaven here. But also you say we are fighting with each other. I don't fight with people. I have lots of friends who agree with me politically. I have lots of friends and colleagues who disagree with me politically, but that doesn't mean that we fight. We can, reasonable minds can reasonably disagree about reasonable things. He says, Nathan says, in general, people are broken. COVID proved that people turn into jerks overnight. I don't think people turn into jerks overnight. I think those people that acted as jerks have always been jerks. But suddenly they had the confidence to do it either because they were behind a mask or because no one held them to account. Now, I'm not discrediting your position. That's certainly your right to feel that way. I think you and I just look at the world through two different lenses, and that's okay. That's one of the beautiful things about living in the developed world, and at least for me in the U.S., I'm not sure where you're from, Nathan, but here in the U.S., reasonable minds can reasonably disagree about reasonable things. If that's your worldview, certainly you're right. That's not my worldview, but it doesn't make either one of us any more or less correct than the other one. My relatives in Edmond said it's 78 degrees there and will be the warmest Christmas on record. That's true. It's true. Yeah. The Christmas season just gets worse and worse every year. Like I don't get me wrong, I don't want Canadian cold, but the winter should be cold. Like we need it to be cold. We need the earth to recover from the heat in the summer. We need it to neutralize. We need it to re-enrich the soil. We need the winter plays a key role in cold weather. The winter plays a key role in our atmosphere. And these really hot Christmases are doing a lot of ecological damage. People threaten me using my job as blackmail. Okay. You should have, if you didn't, you should have taken that to law enforcement because that's a felony. Blackmail of any kind, whether they're blackmailing you from your job or from your spouse or your significant other or whatever, those are felonies. So that should be reported. If it's not, that should be reported to law enforcement. And then secondly, if it's something that poses a headache to you, that causes you consternation, and maybe it is, I don't know the whole story. It's certainly not my story to tell, but if it's causing you heartburn, get out in front of it. I mean, that's what politicians do all the time. They get in front of it like, hey, we're going to jump in, we're going to stick our nose out a little bit here. We're going to get ahead of this thing and we're going to dictate the flow of information. Cold where I am, but no snow. You asked during COVID ? LOL. I'm not sure what you're asking there. I don't mind answering it. I just don't know what you're asking. Ask it again. Is it illegal to fart on someone on purpose? Possibly. I don't think it's a violation of criminal law, but it's certainly a variety of different torts in my head. It certainly could be battery. It could also, it's a variety of torts. So, yeah. So I don't know that it breaks a criminal law, but it certainly, any lawyer I know you're being satirical about it and kind of a D-bag about it, and that's your right. I'm not being critical of the fact that you can be a D-bag, but is it illegal to fart on someone on purpose? It's a violation of a variety of civil torts. I don't know that it's a violation of criminal law. But those are the kind of questions you get in law school all the time, is law school hypotheticals. The cold helps kill certain bacteria that causes harm to healthy soils, et cetera, in the spring from Laura Wall. Yeah, I agree. He says my job was on the line during COVID. Well, and I'm not discounting whatever issue it was that you came across, but my point is, if you were blackmailed, you have to turn that into the police. Like, that's illegal. Any kind of blackmail is illegal. It's a variety of civil torts. It's also a variety of criminal offenses. But I think, to a greater extent, though, every day you go to work, is your job not on the line? Like, every day I go to work, my job's on the line. If I don't do what I'm contractually obligated to do for the people I work for, they have every right to ask me to leave. My family spent years in the oil, or my dad's a whole bunch well down into the oil and gas business, and so people have a job to do. If they don't do it, they get terminated. If somebody came to my dad and said, "Hey, I'm being blackmailed, and somebody's threatening my job," well, that's a big deal. We would take it to the police. In fact, it's happened, and he did take it to the police. Let's see. Well, what? That's not how it worked during COVID. I guess I don't follow. I guess I don't follow you there. That's not how it worked during COVID. That's not how what worked. I don't guess I follow you there. The criminal laws, the only thing that changed in the criminal law depending on the jurisdiction, would have been mask mandates. That would have been the only thing that changed during COVID from the criminal law perspective, was mask mandates. OMG. Okay, have a great night. Listen, medical privacy wasn't erased. Not at all. Medical privacy wasn't erased at all. But you say have a great night. Listen, now, the jab. What about it? The employer has all kinds of rights as far as the kind of workplace they want to provide. You also have a right not to work at a place that wants you to do something you don't feel safe with. That's not putting your job on the line. That's capitalism. Like, if you have an objection, and maybe it's fair. I didn't go to medical school, right? Maybe your objection, your hesitancy to get the vaccine is fair. I'm assuming it's a fair position to take. I certainly don't have an issue with it. If that's your position, cool. Just understand, your employer can take a different position, and if your position and the employer positions don't line up, they don't have to keep you employed, but likewise, you don't have to continue to work there. And so medical privacy was not erased. Not at all. Because that's not remotely how HIPAA works. I'm concerned that you don't really understand how HIPAA works. Should we start deleting laws? I don't know that deleting them is the right answer, because one, how are you going to choose which laws to delete and which laws to keep? But also, we kind of already do that based on the people that we elect into our legislative bodies to make laws. Every time a new law is created, it's going to have either an intended, often, or sometimes unintended consequences as it affects another law. So, to go blindly deleting laws, no, because there are unintended consequences of that. Yeah, there are some laws that need to be cleaned up. There's some laws that are antiquated, and there's probably some laws that could just be deleted. They could be erased from the history books, and that would probably be a good thing. I don't know that there'd be any adverse effects from that, but there are also going to be any number of laws that would have an adverse effect on. So no, we should not blindly go deleting laws. The legislatures and lawmaking bodies already do that, just as a natural part of the lawmaking process. Does blackmail receive religious protection? Blackmail doesn't receive any kind of protection. If it's actual criminal blackmail, it doesn't receive any kind of protection. There is no ecumenical or religious reason that would be, or protection that would apply to blackmail. Sometimes life sucks. We have choices and we tend to see, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I follow that. I follow that. Let's delete the dumb laws. Okay, what's a dumb law? Is the Clean Water Act that makes sure that the water that comes into my house or my family to drink isn't full of pollutants and toxins? Is that a dumb law? Because I don't think it is. You might. I don't think it is. Is the Clean Air Act a bad law that I can walk down the street and not be worried about breathing chemical pollutants from manufacturing facilities and burning coal from power plants? I don't think that's a bad law. I don't think speed limits are bad laws. I don't think the laws that dictate the width of a roadway and the color of the stripes and the type of concrete they have to use so that it sheds water when it rains, I don't think those are bad laws. What's a bad law? Oven People says we got to delete laws. Breathing's near illegal. I don't know that it's. I don't guess I follow the logic there. Breathing is near illegal. Yeah, I don't follow the logic. They say on average the average American commits 3 felonies per day. Okay, who is they? I would like you to cite your source. You may be true, or that may be accurate. That may not be accurate. But without citing your source, I don't know who they is. They could be your drunk Uncle Ricky, because we all have a drunk Uncle Ricky. They could be some legitimate think tank or policy position taker. It could be a series of really good economic scholars or legal scholars. Who is they? I don't know who they is. So without the citation to the authorities, I can't tell you whether you're right or wrong because I don't know who they is. If I'm deposing a witness, I say, okay, well, where'd you get that? Who'd you hear that from? They told me. I would say, who's they? I'd make them list every person who said that to them, where it was said to them, the context in which it was said, and then I'd ask them for any resources or material they looked at to come to that conclusion. So. All right, let's see. I love clean coal. If the coal is if the carcinogens and chemicals are scrubbed out of the coal exhaust prior to venting to atmosphere, I have no problem with it. I come from an oil and gas family. My family made our money for 3 generations pulling oil out of the ground. So Around the World says they say 80% of adult Americans have committed a felony. Who is they? Again, with the whole they thing. Let's see. What was the vaccine passport then? The vaccine passport was simply a way for those who chose to receive a vaccination, it was a way to track those vaccines by serial number and lot number. Because, and this is true of every medication you ever get, every pill bottle has a lot number on it. And every pill has a lot number on it. So when you go to the pharmacy and you get, sinus medication, or you go to the drugstore and you buy a bottle of Motrin, a bottle of ibuprofen, there's a lot number on it. So if there's ever a recall, like we said, there was a major recall of Tylenol in the 80s, I believe, or early 90s. When that recall comes out, you watch the news, they'll say, hey, the affected lot numbers are from this range to that range. And then if you're getting that medication through a pharmacy, the pharmacy tracks that. So if there's ever an issue, if in 20 years they determine that there was some adverse health effect by receiving any of these injections, then you can go back and look at the lot number. Like on the passport, it says the manufacturer of the medicine, the lot number, where it was administered, and who administered it. And then the people who, the nurse or whoever gave the injection, those medical records are also kept. So if they find out that, a nurse was incorrectly injecting people or whatever, like the amount of record keeping in the medical community is enormous. So the vaccine passport simply exists. And we refer to it in the COVID context, but you know what a shot record is for like children when they go to school and they have to produce a shot record? It's a vaccine passport. They gave it a different name because most adults already have a shot record from when they were a child. A vaccine passport is just a shot record, is all it is. Though we've been using shot records for 150 years. There's nothing new about this. Rodolfo E.R. Dogan. Unfortunately, friend, we don't use inappropriate language on this, so goodbye. Penny Ritchie 8307, great job. Have to finish my prep for Christmas dinner. Have a very happy holiday, and to you as well. Let's see. I think the laws that need to be deleted are the ones that make paying taxes mandatory. Well, that's not an uncommon position to take. That's literally the entire platform, 90% of the platform of the modern Republican Party. But also, who is they? The U.S. FBI Statistics Journal. Let me pull this up real quick and see what I can find. FBI Statistics Journal 586 2025. Let's see. All right. So take me the actual document. Yeah, here we go. Let's see. All right. I went to that document you talk about, and I'm not seeing it now. I'm not reading the entire thing from beginning to end necessarily. That came right off the FBI's website, so I'm surprised it didn't. Maybe this. Yeah, it's just I'm looking at that. But also, do you like? Well, let's assume that's true. I haven't looked at the data yet, but let's assume it's true that the average person commits X number of felonies. It's not that they commit felonies, it's what kind of felony is being committed. In Oklahoma, speeding more than 21 miles an hour or more than 20 miles an hour over the speed limit could be a felony. It's also in Oklahoma, every DUI, even a first offense DUI where you're 0.081, that's a felony. Oklahoma does not have misdemeanor DUI laws. Now, the prosecutors will often negotiate it down to like reckless driving or actual physical control or something. Okay. But like excessive speeding can be a felony. Street racing is a felony. We would agree that, I think all of us would agree that those are bad things to do. Those are dangerous activities to engage in, excessive speeding and street racing, but it's not on the same caliber as like unaliving someone or attempting to unalive someone or shaking somebody down or engaging in violent conduct. So it's not, so let's assume it's true. I haven't seen it, but even if it is true, let us assume it's true. It's not that a felony was under that the average person undergoes a felony every day, but more importantly, what is the nature of the felony that they undergo? But also, that's the average person. There are gangbangers who commit 50, 100, 150 felonies a day. And to my knowledge, I've never committed a felony. Not much less get caught. I don't think I've ever committed one. If I did, it would have just been like excessive speeding as a teenager or something. Right? In Oklahoma, if you steal something worth more than $500, it's a felony. If you go to a construction site and steal a traffic cone, throw a traffic cone in the back of your truck to throw it in your buddy's driveway as a prank, that's a felony. It's actually about 4 felonies. So even if the statistic is accurate, and I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but even if the statistic is accurate, understand that felonies aren't all equal. Neither are all misdemeanors. Let's see. Yeah, like, say what? So you mean like accidentally opening someone else's mail? Yeah, it is. It is a strict liability crime. If you do the action, even if you think it's your mail, it is a strict liability felony to open someone else's mail. How many? I mean, have you ever done that? You open, you go, oh crap, that's to my neighbor. You shove it back in the envelope. Hey, I got this. This is in my mailbox. I opened it. Thought it was for me. Sorry. Happens to me like once a week. Oh, no big deal. It happens, right? So it's, one, is the data accurate is the first analysis. And secondly, if the data is accurate, what is the nature of the felonious conduct? That's the other cog in the inquiry, I think. No medical privacy erased. You're correct. No medical privacy was erased. That is a true statement. Why did people openly ask me if I was vaccinated? Because they can, but that doesn't mean you have to answer it. And also understand that, again, this is a failure of not you, but the fact that you don't know how HIPAA works, and most people don't. I'm not critical of that. Very few people know how HIPAA works. You can disclose to anybody anything about your medical history that you want to, but HIPAA only protects you from accident, from either intentional or accidental disclosure by medical providers. HIPAA doesn't stop your neighbor from asking you, did you get vaccinated? It doesn't stop your coworkers or the guy at the gas station or the lady in the checkout line at Walmart. It doesn't protect you from any of that. HIPAA protects you from disclosure of your medical information by people who know your medical information, like doctors and nurses and clinics. If somebody asks you, have you been vaccinated? Your answer can simply be, that's none of your business. I'm sorry. Or if you're crash, you could just tell them to F off. That's an option too. I don't prefer that method, but it can be done. Nothing illegal about that. So COVID did not make medical privacy go away. If you're not familiar with the HIV/AIDS epidemic of the 80s and the way the way the world looked at HIV/AIDS, go look at the same thing. They went through the same thing. HIV/AIDS patients went through the same thing in the 70s and the 80s, particularly in the 80s into the early 90s. People were asking them all the time, do you have this disease? Because HIPAA doesn't protect you from the outside world. It protects you from your provider telling people your secrets, your medical history, your personal private information. It doesn't protect you from people asking. They've always been able to ask. Yeah, don't call me Bud. You don't know me that well. Oh, it's so true. Again, I'm taking your word for it. I haven't read the data. I don't have time with all these people watching me right now to read the data. You guys would just be staring off into space while I read the data. Numbers don't change by race. Again, haven't read it. 80% across the board. Don't know what across the board means. They only count violent felonies since violent felonies are essentially the same in all states. Maybe. Again, not all violent felonies are essentially the same in all states. It's not. There's a lot wrong with that statement. Just because I'm licensed to practice law in different states, like in more than one state, and there are things that are hellaciously violent felonies in Oklahoma that are not violent felonies. The same conduct would not be considered a violent felony in another state. And there are acts and conduct in the other states that were absolutely violent felonies under their statutes that are not violent felonies or even felonies at all, much less a violent felony under Oklahoma law. So again, I take issue with the last sentence there. Violent felonies are essentially the same. That's not. There are some that are the same, like the unlawful taking of a person's life, attempting to take a person's life unlawfully, the use of a weapon in certain acts. Yeah, those are all the same. But after that, there's only a handful of absolutes. The rest of it is gray. Let's see. Okay, then I'll ask you this. If we assume what you're saying is true around the world in 5 seconds, what felony did you commit today? And you can't say you didn't commit one because, by definition, you're the average person. So you had to have committed one. Which one did you commit today? Does Oklahoma have levels of felonies? Kind of. That we use degrees. There's first degree, second degree. So, like in the unaliving, you have first degree, you have second degree, and then you have manslaughter, and then you have first and second are felonies, and then manslaughter is a misdemeanor. How can a mental incompetency ruling work in a defendant's defense? For felony harassment to a judicial officer, I'm assuming you say 4A. I don't know if you're like Fourth Amendment or citing Rule 4A of the Rules of Criminal Procedure. I don't do enough criminal law to answer that with any confidence. I'm sure I learned it in law school when we were talking about the defenses of mental defect, the Monotone Rule, and some of these the various tests. But I haven't read enough on that recently to answer that with any confidence. I'm sorry. DV is a felony. It is, and it should be. Occurs way more often than gangbangers committing felonies. Again, okay, so what's your source on that? What's your source on the rates of DV versus the rates of gang violence? Because I've seen some data, it's been a long time, but probably 10 years ago, but I've seen some data that one of the crimes that street gangs particularly engage in is DV. They also have, drugs and money laundering and, hits and all these other things that they do along with gun violence. But generally speaking, one of the things that, like, when we see street gangs, I'm not talking about organized crime. I'm talking about, just your criminal street gang, right? They come in all races. They come in all genders. You name it. There's an organization. There's a group of people that do it, right? Whatever. That group of people. Obviously, they commit additional felonies, but one of the crimes that they do regularly commit is DV. At one point, one of the best ways to take down gangbangers, if you couldn't catch them pushing dope on the street corner and you couldn't catch them trying to do a drive-by, one of the things they could do to try and get them off the street and at least lock them up while they investigated additional actions to try to flip witnesses was to get them on DV. But then you say, it's interesting, that's the first thing you came up with. Why do we think that's interesting? Our nurse Lori coming in later. Are we discussing HIPAA? Indirectly. Indirectly. One of the commenters felt like during COVID or during the vaccine mandates and stuff, the jab mandates, they felt like their medical rights were violated. I said they weren't, and they expressed a concern. Well, why were people in the street asking me if I was? You didn't say in the street. Why were people asking me if I? Well, they've always been able to ask that. You just don't have to answer it. And I don't know this, but I got the sense that this individual felt like their HIPAA rights were violated. But I said HIPAA doesn't protect you from the outside public. HIPAA protects you from medical providers intentionally or inadvertently disclosing your medical information to people that you have that don't need to know. And then they said, and then the question was, well, what about, vaccine passports? And I said, well, we've always had vaccine passports. We call them shot records. And I talked about how the lot numbers exist in case we have to recall a product or something like that. Like, we can track who had it, that not only do on our shot records and my vaccine passport or whatever, right? Not only does it have the lot number and I have a copy of it, but the people who administered it also have a copy in their records. And this is like a key concept of the Food and Drug Administration. Like, this is a big part of what they do is drug safety and medication safety. Am I still accepting requests to hire you to answer relatively short legal questions unrelated to anything happening online as not to incur conflicts? Mine involves legal billing issues. I don't know that you can hire me for that because, again, I don't know your jurisdiction. There's a lot of things there. If you're hiring me to give legal advice, we need to have a retainer agreement. But if you have specific questions, maybe I can refer you to someone, or I can give you just like not legal advice, but I can explain to you the process. At least in, or resources, whatever. Feel free to email me. It's your lawyer friend Zach, all one word. No H, no K, just ZAC, your lawyer friend Zach @gmail.com. You can also find it on the YouTube homepage, channel page. Julie Travis says, glad you're back, question mark. I'm thinking that was supposed to be 2 exclamation points, or you're not sure if you're glad yet or not. Hope you're feeling doing well. We are. Yeah. Everybody's happy and healthy. So groovy. Happy Quails LC. I'm in California. Yeah, I've been in California. I know nothing about their legal system. What protects an employer or landlord or government agent discriminating against me because I refuse to receive a shot? Good question. One, there's a variety of laws that protect you, including Section 1983 of the Civil Rights Act. But really, there's also like the Americans with Disabilities Act and a bunch of other federal and state statutes that it makes it unlawful to ask and makes it unlawful to discriminate against, because if you receive either receive or fail to refuse to receive, like for example, my mother-in-law, she doesn't take the flu vaccine because she's allergic, because she has an adverse reaction to it. One of my kids can't get the flu vaccine because they're allergic to eggs, and the flu vaccine has eggs in it. Right. But maybe you have another, religious objection. Maybe you just don't understand or don't believe the science, whatever it is. It's your right. I'm not critical. It's your right to make your medical choices for your body. I'm not critical of that. Okay. What protects me or from an employer or landlord or government agent discriminating against me because I refuse? Well, in the private sector, you don't necessarily have protections. You don't have as many protections, because employers can set whatever guidelines they want to, as long as it doesn't discriminate against a protected class. And protected class is going to be things like disabilities, gender, race, ethnicity, religion. Like those are protected classes. Whether you did or did not receive a particular medication or a treatment for a particular disorder, it does not constitute being a member of a protected class. So in the private sector, you have less protections. In the government sector, that's all governed by Congress. So. We've been going about an hour 22. You guys tickled my lawyer brain today. Made me work a little bit here. Yeah, there you go. Art and Courts took like that 3-minute rambling quasi nonsense I just told you and summarized it into a sentence. Freedom of contract, so long as it doesn't infringe on a protected right. Yep, exactly. And this goes back to what I was saying to whoever the commenter was earlier. One around the world. Trying to find it. It's not Oven People. Nathan Hazelhurst, 484. I was talking with Nathan earlier. That's in the same vein as what we talked about, what I talked about with him. And I'm not sure, I think you were on the channel by then, but like, you don't have to work for an employer who either asks or expects, but the employer, and so you either don't take the job or you leave the job. But likewise, the employer is allowed to determine whether or not you qualify to work for them based on whether you do. And it could be as simple as like, okay, I have a religious objection to it. Maybe that particular employer isn't a religious person. Maybe you have a scientific objection to it, and your employer, that particular employer, is involved in the science space. And that says, okay, well, this person doesn't believe modern science. It doesn't mean you're right or wrong, but they can't have someone in their company who has a different culture, who doesn't fit in the company culture because of your beliefs. It doesn't mean you're wrong, and it doesn't mean the employer's right. It means that you have the ability to dictate under what conditions you're willing to work, as long as those conditions are, reasonable and lawful. And the same goes for the employer. So if the employer asks or expects, and it's not something you support, then you have the right to say no. And the employer has the right to say no or to dissolve a work relationship as well. Hope that helps. Any last questions before we wrap it up? I saw something pop up there. Let me see who it was. People got fired over a medical decision and couldn't collect employment insurance benefits that they paid into. Well, you didn't pay into it. Your employer did. Yeah, you didn't. The employees in every state, the employees do not pay into the unemployment insurance fund. The employer does, and the rate that the employer pays has to do with the number of unemployment claims that have been made against that employer. And if somebody gets fired, that doesn't automatically mean they qualify for unemployment insurance or employment insurance. In Oklahoma, we call unemployment benefits. In some states, they call it employment insurance. Just because you lose your job or somebody, hopefully it wasn't you. Sounds like it wasn't you. Sounds like it may have been a little hairy there for a while. Maybe it wasn't you. Okay, so in Canada, so I'm seeing your most recent comment. You live in Canada, and so in Canada, sounds like you guys pay into EI, and that's probably why you call it EI instead of unemployment benefits. But I can't speak specifically for the Canadian rule. I know the American rule, so I think that may be where a little bit of our disconnect is. Because I know that we have certain constitutional protections in the U.S. that you guys don't necessarily have in Canada. Although there are many people on this channel who are Canadian, including my great moderator Laura Waldy. So, lots of Canucks on here. But yeah, and so hopefully you found the engagement at least somewhat entertaining. Yeah. So the protections we get in the U.S. don't necessarily apply to, certainly don't all apply to Canada. But I suspect, again, not knowing the Canadian rule, but understanding how the idea of unemployment protection works, unemployment benefits work. If there are certain things, like if you leave a job with work remaining, or if you get terminated from a job for cause, then you do not qualify for unemployment benefits, at least in the States. In the U.S., I can't speak for Canada, but assuming the Canadian rule is built somewhat on the same logic structure as the U.S. the U.S. rule, then hopefully that's at least somewhat responsive. Luckily, you were subcontract. Yeah, good. So it sounds like it got a little scary, but you wrote it out. So ultimately, so all that stuff about the HIPAA, that doesn't apply to you, because HIPAA is a U.S. act. That's the Health Insurance Portability and Patient Protection Act, or Health Insurance Portability and Privacy Act, something along those lines. Anyway, it's a U.S. act. So all the things I was talking to you about HIPAA were presupposing you were an American. So I should have asked, but that's at least now you have some knowledge as to how it works here in the States. Laura says that's true in Canada as well regarding EI. Okay, yeah. Yeah. So just because one loses their job doesn't automatically mean that they qualify for unemployment. So in the States, you lose your job, you apply for unemployment, and then your employer is notified that this former employee, and when I say lose your job, maybe you were fired, maybe you got quit, maybe the company laid you off, like you didn't get fired, they just ran out of work for you to do, had downsize, whatever. So it's one of those things that you apply for unemployment benefits, and then your employer is notified, hey, this person is applying for these benefits. Do you object to them receiving unemployment benefits? And the employer says, no, I don't object, and they pay. Now, most employers will object and fight it, because the more people that have left their employment and then gotten unemployment assistance affects the rate at which the company has to pay in. So the more people that leave and get benefits, the more money that the company has to pay in. We call it insurance, but it's essentially a tax. The tax rate is determined by how many claims you have as a percentage of your employed base. So if I employ 100 people and I have 2 people get on benefits, I'll have a higher rate than somebody who employs 100,000 and has 1,000 go on benefits. and leave the employment, right? They had more go on, but it was a smaller percentage of their employed base. So it's sort of a sliding scale. They call it insurance. It's essentially a tax, and the tax rate is determined by the percentage of your employees who go and receive benefits. And so employers can contest it. And then ultimately, at least in Oklahoma, we have the Employment Security Commission, and their job is to conduct hearings and determine whether or not benefits are the applicant is entitled to benefits. Let's see. We don't have a constitution. We have a charter of rights. We do have medical privacy laws, but they're erased. Okay, yeah. So that may be true. I don't keep up with Canadian law. That may be true, and if that's true, I hate that for you. There's certain health information. All health information should be private. So, yeah, hate that for you, man. Paid on behalf of you by the employer. Employers were forced by the government overstood. Oh, okay. Yeah. Let's see. It was blackmail. Yeah, it wasn't blackmail. It feels like that, but that's not the definition of blackmail. If you look up the legal definition of blackmail. If we look at Black's Law Dictionary, for example, you have to have an unlawful demand, including which requires the asking for money, property, or something of value. It also requires a threat, a promise to reveal harmful secrets, report crimes, or damage reputation. It has to be a conditional threat, meaning if I receive this payment, if I receive this thing, then I won't release this information. And so those three elements have to be satisfied, at least under the U.S. common law. That's the U.S. common law definition of blackmail. No, coercion is not blackmail. They are not the same thing. It is not splitting hairs. Those are two very different legal concepts. Coercion is legal. Undue coercion or coercion under threat is illegal. But coercion is still a different definition than blackmail. Coercion means compelling someone to act against their will through force, threats, or unlawful pressure. Undermining free consent and making actions like signing contracts avoidable. It's a form of duress. So yeah, it's not blackmail. Two very different legal concepts. Legal according to whom? What are you talking about? Well, like by definition, entering into a contract is coercion. Like you go to buy a car, you sign a purchase agreement with the car dealership, you sign the agreement, you give them money, they give you the keys in the car. Right? You were coerced into signing that contract because they gave you a price you agreed with and a vehicle that you wanted to drive. That is not illegal. That's commerce. When they use threats, they use undue, they put you into duress, they use undue force or leverage, then it becomes illegal coercion. But coercion is not inherently illegal. Right? Coercion is the key idea in, just mass contracting, actually. There was nothing legal about COVID. COVID was a virus. It still is. The virus is not the status of the virus is not a legal thing. It's a medical and health community thing. I'm not sure I follow the thought there. Hi, Zach. Merry Christmas from Vancouver, BC. Sharon, and Merry Christmas to you and yours, Sharon, as well. Undertow, what do you want for Christmas? Well, as they say in Miss Congeniality, we're harsher penalties for parole violators and world peace. Let's see, you say you want a swimming pool full of Mountain Dew Baja Blast. Hope Santa comes through. I hope Santa comes through for you as well, and you can have all the Baja Blast you want, because I don't drink sugary carbonated beverages, and even when I did, not a Mountain Dew guy. Anything that is the color of radiation, whether it's green or blue or yellow, I'm out. The government totally overstepped and our courts ignored our charter. Well, did they ignore your charter, or did they just interpret the charter in a way that you disagree with? Those are two different things. I mean, inherently, they didn't ignore it. They just interpreted it in a way that you don't agree with. He says it was a bad cold. No, it wasn't. So I graduated in 2008 from high school with 77 people. And I personally know from that class 2 people that died of COVID in the first round. Another one had a spouse die of COVID in the first round. In total, I know either I personally know or know the spouses of 11 people who died of COVID. So COVID is not a bad cold. It is mutated. Our understanding of it is better, and the way we treat it is better. So it is less harmful now than it was when it first came out, but that's true of any virus, any infection of any kind. Okay. But it is now a bad cold. I've had it a couple of times. It is now just that stuffy head. Like I wasn't even know I had it. The first round was not a bad cold. It was a deadly viral infection that caused permanent and severe lung damage. So no, it is not a bad cold. And I know 11 people who I could prove that would disagree with you. No, of course, you're just an anti-government guy, and that's okay. All right, guys, we've given Nathan about as much fun as we're going to let him have when he starts attacking people and trying to discredit their experiences. Then unfortunately, he's not going to be able to stay and party with us very long. No, I'm not pro-government. I'm government neutral. I think there's times where government's bad and it oversteps. I think there's times where government is soft and it needs to do more. But I also benefit from government services like water running to my house and my trash getting picked up on the curb tomorrow morning. So, it is what it is. So, yeah, no, I'm not pro-government. I'm not anti-government. I'm for reasonable government. I think government serves a critical purpose, like making sure that I have clean water to drink and clean air to breathe, and that my house is built to safe standards so that doesn't collapse with my family in it. That doesn't mean I'm pro-government. And, I've always said, I don't mind if people attack me on this channel. It's a public forum. I'm completely fine with that. But what you're not going to do, Nathan, is undermine people, discredit people, and try to, and whether you're doing it directly or indirectly, when you say that it was just a bad cold and refuse to acknowledge the harm that it caused other people, whether it was a deadly illness or nearly deadly or caused permanent damage, by downplaying or discrediting their experience, it's a form of disrespect, and we don't handle disrespect here. So I hope you enjoyed your time with us, but unfortunately, you got to go in 3, 2, 1. See ya. Problem solved. Let's see. All right, guys, we're going an hour 40. We're going to shut it down. I'm tired. I want to go to bed. I got to get ready for Santa Claus. All right. Appreciate you guys coming by, hanging out with me as always. Had a blast. If you haven't already, click the like button, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the bell notification so you're notified every time we go live. Guys, have questions? Let me know. Otherwise, do me a favor. Be kind to someone. We'll see you guys soon.